Hello and welcome to a review of the Toyama Nakiri 210. Quite a big knife. It's been freshly sharpened. As you can tell, there's quite a lot of grind marks on the side from my lazy sharpening this morning. So rule of thumb is don't sharpen your knives when you're drunk. But secondly, even worse, don't do it on a hangover because you're even more lazy. So I can fix that up later, but for all intents and purposes, this is a continuation of the Toyama knife review of the Gyoto 240. This is another one of my favorites. I'm a bit of a cleaver guy, so having a big fat Nakiri with huge weight behind it but a razor sharp edge for me is an excellent knife. Most people would go for a 180 if in terms of size, probably finishing about here and a little bit shorter as well. So that's probably more versatile, but this is brilliant for big squash and large produce. I would also say though, it's a fun knife if you're into your cleavers as well, so I'm going to give it a shot on another potato that's been freshly peeled, as well as a little bit of cabbage, just to give you an idea of sort of power through sort of harder fibrous produce. So just to begin with, potatoes, going to do the same as before, just going to give it a nice, do nice slices of potatoes. I'll grab a few more bowls to put these in. But the one thing about this Nakiri which is different from the Gyoto is that it's a lot thinner in terms of its profile. A little bit less convexity here, which is where the food release comes into play. And then it goes straight up almost and then thickens a little bit at the spine. Now why that's important is that when you've got taller produce, the convexity can sometimes create resistance through a cutting motion. And that's generally useful for softer produce, but the bigger and more fibrous and harder produce, it becomes more difficult. So you want something that has almost a bit more performance. This has got a great balance between a little bit of convexity whilst having a really large power with the height of the blade as well as the weight of the blade. This by itself is about 250 with the standard light handle, so it's very blade forward. The Toyama before that I showed had a custom handle which was also 250, but without that slightly heavier custom handle it would have been about 210. So just to give it a bit of performance, one thing I will say is this has been coffee patinaed, and over time it's been replaced by a natural patina. And we'll just give it a bit of a go on these potatoes. It just, the performance is better. You'll notice that its food release is not so good, but for me that's not a major concern. Now, one thing that you'll also notice is that how shiny the produce is, and this is something I didn't talk about earlier, but so the sharper you get, there's this amazing effect you get with produce where it it holds all of its moisture, and that's because it's been cut so finely. So that's one of the added benefits of having super sharp performing knives. So once again, beautiful knife. It's not for everyone size-wise, but if you are into your bigger size cleavers, this is just wonderful. There are a few extra techniques that aren't the standard Western style technique of cutting, which is the standard claw and going back. With a cleaver, sometimes you might see a situation where you're using the blade, you're using this kind of grip. You actually tuck the thumb under, and this index finger actually moves up and down with the blade to get super fine cuts. And so what you'll see is that when it's cutting, you get this kind of effect. You can only obviously do this with blades with a high height, like a cleaver. With this one, you can barely do it, but every now and again, if you want to do super fine cuts, that's just one way of guiding the blade. An extra way of guiding the blade, that is. All right, so let's do a little bit of cabbage. This is nice and thick, and it's a nice piece of cabbage. I'm just going to probably take off a small portion of that for the purposes of today, and all I want to do is show a little bit of the sort of how easily it goes through things like cabbage. See, once again, it's and this is me being tired and hungover. It's a very easy knife to use, and if you use the large, powerful knives, me personally, this is one of my, another one of my favourites. And very rarely do I buy two knives from the same maker because I just like to try different knives. But in the case of Toyama, it's just a no-brainer. This guy is just phenomenal with the heat treat that he's put on these blades, but also the geometry that he's chosen to use with the Nakiri versus the Giotto means that they complement one another very well. This is a much thinner, well, less convexity kind of knife, a lot more power. Specifically, as most people might know about Nakiris, they're designed for vegetables. But fundamentally, it's just a beautiful knife. Last time I tried to show the spine of the Toyama, but I'll try and get it right this time. But this is the kind of thickness of the spine, and it doesn't really need to taper distally at all, which is sort of going from thick to thin. Why? Because really it's not got a tip for it to require anything like that. Now, going back to the Toyama, I'll try and show the spine this time. As you can see here, there's a 4mm spine, and it tapers all the way closer to 1mm actually, and here is where it starts to really taper for the tip. So they're the two knives, Toyama Giotto 240 and the Giotto and the Nakiri 210. Fantastic knives, and if you want something with good performance, excellent grind, excellent heat treatment, then highly recommend the Toyamas. Once again, enjoy your knives, and if you get one of these, let us know how you go with it.